Join me as we conclude our interview with Bruce Lee historian Bey Logan as we get the inside scoop on Bruce Lee's Game of Death and his box office sensation, the classic Enter the Dragon. Enjoy!
And I have a suspicion, and it is just that, but also based on my conversation with Andre Morgan, because I remember what Andre said is that when Enter the Dragon came along, they suspended production on Game of Death. Right. Bruce said to him, "Thank God, this gives me some time to figure out how to finish Game of Death."
So he really didn't have the full story himself yet.
I suspect he might have come back with all of the offers and all of the heat of the unexpected massive success of Enter the Dragon, because we thought it would be a hit. They thought it would be a hit, but not that much.
Right.
He may well have looked back at Game of Death and said, you know what, I'm going to make a documentary out of it, I'm going to do something else with it, or I suppose the most extreme thing, he might have been like, I won't release it
I'll just abandon the project, right? Yeah.
Just keep it there and figure out what to do with it later. And there are
because it would almost, if it didn't come out great, it would almost took a step back to Enter the Dragon, right? And he wouldn't want that, right?
Well, for example, there was when Clint Eastwood went to do the Dollars films in spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
He also filmed a role in a contemporary Italian film called The Witches. I think it's called The Witches. But anyway, and then I think it was whoever distributed Fistful of Dollars, those films.
Yeah, those were fine.
Universal.
Yeah.
Bought the rights and shelved the film because they thought that this was not advancing Clint Eastwood's career.
Yeah.
Now it's available to see.
Yeah.
But that was it. So there's precedence for films being shelved because they might limit the career of the lead.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Player.
That makes sense.
But it's a big question mark, and it is an interesting piece of work. I think as much as Enter the Dragon, as much as Game of Death 1978 was like obviously work for hire exploitation, Game of Death was like a martial art film where Bruce has got this freedom and he goes, okay, all these ideas, no one's going to stop me, and I'm going to do them. Now, I'm actually a believer in that art is born of restraint and dies of freedom. That you actually have artists do their best work when they're in some kind of system or have a partner or have somebody, including myself. As opposed to, here's all the money in the world, here's all the time in the world, do what you want. I don't think that necessarily most filmmakers work well in that sense. So,
wow.
And so I think Game of Death was a result of that. That you went out and, if you look at a lot of great filmmakers, the second films are ones where they got all the freedom in the world. Like, what was the first film that Spielberg made after Jaws?
Well, when did E.T. come out?
1941.
Was it that?
That was the movie, 1941.
Oh, wow.
Which is this kind of, everything but the kitchen sink, kind of slapstick film, and it was kind of perceived as a bit of a disappointment, and then he went back to doing other films after. But a lot of filmmakers have that first massive success, and then whatever you want. But maybe the second film, there are instances where the second film is extraordinary, but a lot of the times it's just basically, as I say, art, dying of freedom.
Yeah, wow, interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Bey. Let's move on to his pinnacle film, Enter the Dragon.
Yes.
So, Enter the Dragon. Enter was my favorite, just because I thought the quality and the production of it was just so elevated compared to all those other films.
Oh yeah,
they were all great, but that one to me just stuck out. Just the vibrancy of the color, the tone of the film was just beautifully done.
I also think that who was the scriptwriter?
Michael Allen.
Michael Allen, who wrote the script, gets really short thrift because he's become a punchline story. Oh, Bruce kicked him off the set. No, somebody had to somehow compress East-West culture, and I can relate because I've been doing it kind of ever since, into a script, and to find time and breathing space for some ideas. And not all of them made it into the finished version, not all of them made it even into the finished script. But like, just the idea of Seth Gein giving this Nietzschean talk, it's hard to associate these horrors with the proud civilization. They worship strength. Because strength makes all other values possible. Who knows what delicate wonders have died out of the world. The idea that you stop even this was the most philosophy you had in a Warner Brothers action film between that and The Matrix.
Yes.
American films didn't do that.
No.
And even, you know, at the beginning, don't think, feel, with his finger pointing away to the moon. That was, even though they took out a lot of what Bruce had done, that was allowed in.
Right.
That the idea that you, and even if you look at the movies that the kind of the action pictures Golden Harvest made in the wake of Bruce's success, they missed the poetry. And then, you know, years later, you had another film with the dragon, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which again balanced poetry, cinematography, and balletic movement.
Yeah, that was
one wonderful film. And I wrote and produced a sequel, and you come back and you go, well, this is really an opportunity as a filmmaker to be as poetic and as bright and as loud and operatic as you want to be. And I mean, there are moments in the film that defy critical analysis. It's like after Bruce jumps up and breaks the neck of Bob Wall and floats back, everything's silent. I've never shown the film or seen the film where the audience was just at that moment. Now you analyze it, and then when he jumps up and the expressions on his face. Now,
many expressions.
If another actor did that, they would be laughed off the screen. And in fact, some of the Bruceploitation actors did try to do that, and were to some degree by mainstream audiences laughed off the screen. But nobody felt that way about Bruce. And so I do think I've read capsule reviews or even lengthy reviews of Enter the Dragon where it's, a slipshod Hong Kong co-production enlivened only by the presence of Bruce Lee. No, it's an overall very well constructed pastiche of Dr. No, and with a few Bond references in there, which expresses a lot of ideas about Chinese martial arts and martial art culture within the context of which you have Bruce Lee as the figure. So I think it gets short thrift as a film. And you mentioned earlier, you know, have done just extemporaneously did these kind of like live commentaries on Enter the Dragon, where I would point out funny, interesting, odd things, but also talk about that in the context of the scenes. And I think I did it one time, if I remember correctly, we had somebody who was meant to come and give a talk at the Kwai Fong Martial Club who didn't show up, but the people were there. So I was like, well, what do you want to see? And they said, well, you're Mr. Bruce Lee, show us Enter the Dragon. So I sat there and just, for something to do, started churning out all these factoids. And they were falling around laughing. They just loved it.
I know.
You know, and so later when Alex and the guys came, you know, if it works once.
It worked again. He was blown away by it.
Absolutely,
So I have a few questions for you. So one of the other big questions is you know, everyone wonders, Bruce's fight with the extra, when the extra came off the wall, challenged Bruce, right? Everyone's always asks about that. And Anna Capri sitting there with her camera, right? You can see a photo of her with the camera.
I think it was also on Henry Wong's behind the scenes footage, all that footage that was lost.
Right, exactly. So, first of all, what was your take on that fight? What did you hear about it? And then also, do you think any of that was actually ever filmed? Because you could see the sequence. You put the photos together. I've done it on my channel. You could see that there's a fight taking place.
No, when
there's enough photos taken. Somebody was snapping photos of, you know, that encounter.
was kind of loaned out by Media Asia to produce a documentary with Walt Missingham, the Australian filmmaker, in Hong Kong. And we had Madeleine Chan, who'd been the production manager, one of the production managers on Enter the Dragon, and Henry Wong, who had shot the behind the scenes footage. And they both were alive, and they both agreed to come back to Tai Tam, the setting of the finale.
Yeah.
Go back on what were tennis courts then, and our tennis courts now, by the way, of the American club. And we walked through it together. So again, what a blessing to get it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And Madeleine said, yeah, and the guy jumped down from here. I said, yeah, and I was filming just here. And he remembers filming it.
He does.
I don't think it was a knockdown, drag-out brawl the way, you know, you've seen it depicted in other films. I think it was more, I mean, everybody who ever worked with Bruce Lee has said to me, this guy was the fastest human being they've ever seen.
That's for certain.
Faced Donnie Yen 2 or 3 times in films as a adversary, and he is blindingly fast. And you think, if Bruce Lee was as fast or faster than him, amazing. So basically it was more like, this guy would try to move, and Bruce Lee, I think, the way he looked at the world, for action, people were moving in slow motion. So there'd be a guy moving in slow, the guy would move and he would just bam, and kicked him in the mouth or whatever, and it was over quite quickly.
That's what I heard.
But Henry remembered filming it, and remembered taking the footage into Fred Weintraub's temporary office at Golden Harvest and saying, this footage is yours. This was all of the, you know, behind the scenes footage.
Oh my God.
And Fred said, what am I going to do with this? And Henry goes, well, you know, it's yours. And then Fred said, well, you know, I don't want that. You take it. And Henry's a very, very honest guy. And he said, well, even the nitrate, even the film stock belongs to you. So if you don't want it as film, this still is yours, I'm not taking it. And that was that. And then it was never seen again, presumably thrown away.
Wow.
And then after Bruce died, Henry told me, Raymond Chow kept calling him and saying, how are you doing, Henry? How are things? And Henry was like, why is Raymond Chow calling me? And he said, by the way, you remember all that stuff from Enter the Dragon? Did you keep any of it? And Henry goes, no. And he goes, well, if you know where it is, I'll pay you this much. And the next week, it was double. And the next week, he kept calling him.
Wow.
Finally, Henry said, Raymond, I appreciate you calling me, but I do not have the footage and don't know where it is. And even if you offer me $1 million, I can't give it to you. And he never heard from Raymond again.
Look at that, wow. So it was filmed, it's just we'll probably never see that footage.
Well, you know what the thing is, Charles? I mean, and even again, if you ask me about stuff from my career, I might tell you something I absolutely remember, and later you go back and show me some footage, and I go, oh, wait a minute, so it wasn't like that? So, per the memory, the first-hand memory of the people that I've spoken to, it was filmed.
Okay.
But until you actually see it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the sword in the head.
Yeah,
you see it, seeing is believing, right?
Seeing is believing, that's
so
true.
I, by the way, I don't believe the sword in the head was shot, and I think Henry remembers right, because he was very sharp as a person, a very smart individual. I don't think he sat there going, well, I'll tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
No, he was there. And why wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, I think there are some stills of that general time that show Henry in shot filming. So,
yes, you see him in a few scenes, yes, with him filming, and people are always saying when you show that still, where's the footage the guy's been filming? It has to be out there because, you know, he's always behind the camera.
Of course, if somebody would have helpfully said to Raymond Chow or to Fred Weintraub, this paragon of physical grace is going to pass away within the next year.
Yeah.
Then they would have clung to everything.
Exactly.
But everybody was like, no, they were focused on, we're going to Enter the Dragon too.
Yep. So what's your take as to why did Bruce have Wong Shun Leung on the set of Enter the Dragon? What was that about? Remember when he did that, he brought him there and there's those still
photos? Well, I think there were two aspects to that. I mean, genuinely...
was his senior Wing Chun instructor, right?
I think there was a sense of like, and I've had a bit of this myself, as like, if you've been the junior or the underling and you rise to become a filmmaker, or you got power and you're using a big movie studio, as I've been blessed to do in my career. Yeah. When family members or people you've met before come on the set and they're like, wow, you're making this? You feel good about yourself.
I guess.
And I think there was a little bit of that. Bruce was like, hey, now I'll show you.
Look what I've accomplished.
Now I'll show you. Yeah. And he genuinely wanted Wong Shun Leung to be in Game of Death. And
okay.
so the ostensible reason was to shoot some test footage to show how Wong would look on film and how one made movies different to real fighting.
Okay, that makes sense, because there was supposed to be a Wing Chun floor, right, where he was going to fight a Wing Chun opponent, right, on level maybe 1 or I forgot what level it was, but yeah.
So that would have been Wong Shun Leung. I don't know, I read a different version. I even read that something that he was going to be doing Mantis Kung Fu, which doesn't make any kind of sense.
Yeah.
Maybe that was Taki Kimura.
Well, Taki was supposed to do one of those also, either Mantis or Wing Chun also, I read that as well. Wow.
Again, I think the reason that you get so many different kind of like versions of it is, I don't think, hand on my heart, even Bruce knew for a fact what was going to, what it was going to be.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But then you do see the outline he did at the tower, it's the 50 guys, and then it's this level, and this level, and this level.
Yep, and he has it all written out, you know, who level 1, where the Mantis is, Wing Chun, he had them all written out. So, did you hear about the footage that was filmed by John Saxon recently, and Antonio Saxon, now his son, is doing a project, a documentary with David Tadman, and supposedly there's this footage that was filmed by Saxon and his wife at the time, which no one knew about.
Right.
And Antonio now discovers this footage that's
amazing.
That's amazing. So now we're going to see this extra footage in a documentary, in a book series. Have you seen that footage?
I have not. And one of my big regrets was that I never made the effort, not just from Enter the Dragon, but I actually admired John Saxon as an actor from other work, other things he'd done, but that I never made the effort to meet him in person. I also think it's interesting, if you're a fan and you live and breathe Bruce Lee, you know, there's guys like Steve Courage and Rick Baker and you know, David Tadman, where they're kind of they live and breathe. It's all day long, and then every new photo, every new thing, it's like, this is my life. I regret not meeting him, where I could probably speak more. I rather speak of people that I knew personally. But in John Saxon's case, my impression was he had that experience. He did Enter the Dragon. He did a fantastic job. Yeah. He came back after those weeks. How many weeks was it? Because it's the name of his book.
11 weeks in Hong Kong or something. Yeah.
Did that. Came back to America, and it was like back to whatever else he was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wasn't sitting there thinking, boy, how can I exploit Bruce Lee? How can I exploit the time that I was in Hong Kong? And I think he kept home movie footage for himself, photos for himself. Later in life, Bruce has died. Years and years pass, and it really takes someone like David Tadman knocking on the door and saying, do you have anything on Bruce?
Probably did. That's probably what happened, and that's how probably it was discovered. And they got supposedly Antonio Saxon, who's now grown up, right, to figure out where this was at. And
you know, it's interesting because I have footage and things from films that I've made that I've never exploited, and it's not because nobody would let me, or it's just that I'll give you an example. Recently, they re-released a movie that I wrote and produced called The Medallion with Jackie Chan. And Sony were difficult to work with when we made the film, and they're difficult all these years later, because I had a whole earlier cut of the film. And I said I would make it available to the distributor for free and put it on there to show the different cut of the movie. And Sony wouldn't allow it. So it goes back in the closet.
Yeah, it goes back in the closet.
So I think there's a lot of material out there, and then the question is, does the person have the inclination and the organizational skill to put something around? Look how long it took for the Anna Capri footage to come out.
Oh, I know.
Well, I thought she was a bit like Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, that all these young guys came to see her because she had the footage, and as soon as she gave it away, they'd stop.
I remember when it was first introduced that she had the footage. She was trying to sell it for like 65 grand at the time through Heather Holmberg auction house in the 90s. And everyone was like, oh, should I buy it? Shouldn't I buy it? It's like, and now everyone, it's all over YouTube now. It's a shame. I don't even know if she just sold the footage, but it's gone.
Well, she passed away, so I mean, I don't know who her you know, successors were. I mean, what's the word? People who are you know, when somebody dies, the people who have the people who benefit from her estate. I'm not sure who they were. But I definitely think we were talking earlier about, you know, my kind of aborted Bolo project. I think that as a filmmaker, as a film figure, you have two responsibilities. One is to your own art, and one is to posterity. So somebody, if you have an opportunity to do a documentary and to do it, present it in a proper way, you should do that, and not, yes, you perhaps want to be paid for your work, but it's not all about the money. You have responsibilities to posterity to present work in a certain way, and to preserve what you've done. So I think with Anna, she would be better off going to someone like David and saying, okay, build a documentary around this, put it out, and we present it in a way that we're happy with, and we've made a bit of money for ourselves, and we've actually preserved the memory of Bruce. But it was like, even when I was doing the documentary Death of Bruce Lee for History Channel, we labored mightily to get Betty Ting Pei to do a one-time interview to talk about her memories of Bruce, talk about what happened. And we came really close, and it didn't happen because the person representing her made it all about insane amounts of money. And I think there's like a market value for the work you're doing, and then there is your debt to history and to posterity. The show as a whole came out very well, but I was disappointed we didn't manage to land that one.
Wow, that would have been something if you got Betty on there.
And the interview, I mean, Philip Chan Yang would have been the perfect interview.
Perfect. Yeah.
But again, and then later I spoke to other people, and they said they didn't think that even Betty had properly been presented with this, that the people round her were the ones who were kind of obstructing what was going on.
Yeah, I watched that 2-hour documentary you did. It was good. The outcome, it's funny, it took you full circle, because the outcome was exactly what you read 30 years, 50 years ago, when they said he was given the painkiller, he got allergic reaction to the Jizik at the time, right? His brain swelled, and he died from that reaction to the chemical that was in that painkiller, right?
I mean, I had a huge.
So, what's your whole take on the death of Bruce Lee? I mean, do you have a theory? Are you satisfied with that theory?
I had a theory that is actually within the structure of that documentary is considered, which was that he, on 2 occasions, consumed cannabis that had been tainted with some alien, not alien from outer space, but some strange chemical, and he had a bad reaction at Golden Harvest and almost died, but they got him to hospital in time.
On May 10th,
Had a bad reaction the second time, and they didn't get him in hospital in time, and he died. That, when you take Occam's razor, well, what we knew for the longest time, that was it.
That was it.
I went out with an actor called Fan Moi-san, who had in the 70s been at the nexus of the martial arts world, the film world, and the gangster world, which were all very much connected in the 70s. And he had his own theory of Bruce being beaten in a street fight, taken to Betty's apartment, a massive cover-up happening. He had chapter and verse on that. So that was something, because of who he is, he's still around, I believe, who he is, you couldn't discount it, because he was on the ground and he had that story to tell. Then thirdly, which I'm hesitant to touch on because it's such a sensitive subject, apparently Bruce was experimenting in every area of life, including taking other drugs, which I now look at and think, well...
And that came out after you made the film, right? Because so you didn't even have the coke and the other drugs now, because the coke letters came out.
Would not have known in a million years, like everybody.
Yeah, it was a shock to all of us.
Wow. And then of course you in the earlier discussions about it, I felt it was very straightforward as to what probably happened based on what you knew. But now there's so much in terms of like chemicals that could have caused a negative effect that we didn't know about. So, and what the thing was, I did the documentary. When we began the documentary, it was a more general overview of Bruce's life.
Yes.
And then it got slotted by history. It was a tortuous project into being about Bruce's death. And I felt bad, and Robert Lee, Bruce's younger brother, who I became good friends with in the course of the shoot, I mean, he was very patient about it, but I think he was a bit like, it wasn't really what he signed on for, but we did it, did the best we could do. And then we'd like to come back into it again and do a film about the earlier life of Bruce Lee and be more positive. And I kind of always feel like, now, given the fresh evidence that's come up, I genuinely feel that it's a mystery that will remain a mystery forever.
Yeah, I do
because
too.
there's so many random elements. You go, okay, was it after everything? You put everything aside and say, okay, we knew he took cannabis on these occasions. Fan Moi-san comes in and says he also had sustained a head injury. Is that possible? Because this guy would know, and he talks about it. Thirdly, you have the Bob Baker drug letters, as they're now called, and I kind of didn't want to believe it, and what made me believe it may be true was the fact that the Lee estate, who are so quick to denounce things they don't like,
silent. silent.
That surprised me.
Not one word.
I was hoping they were going to come out and say
they usually say silence means consent, right?
Yeah. I wish they would have come out, and it was like they were so loud to attack, something like, Birth of the Dragon, and so loud to attack Quentin Tarantino. But then somebody comes out and says the Idol of Millions took these substances. I didn't know. I was shocked. I wanted Shannon to come out, and where was her voice then to say this is nonsense, these are forgeries, it's all lies? And there was no statement.
Nothing.
So I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
And to this day I don't. But if there's a scintilla of truth to him taking these other drugs, obviously that could be a contributing factor.
Yeah, you have to take all those now. And then you have the poly theory of the dehydration and the heat stroke, right? And the weight loss that he had.
Matt Polly is the dearest, kindest, most patient guy, and a nice guy. It's always difficult when people ask me to talk about other filmmakers, other people, but in the context of that, I think that's, I don't know if you're allowed to use the word bollocks, but I think that whole thing with the dehydration is a load of bollocks.
Oh yeah?
And I've seen again and again, because Matt's book, which is a wonderful work.
It was a good book.
When he came to Hong Kong, he actually was based out of my office.
Oh wow.
And I knew he was doing his own, I was doing my own Bruce Lee quietly. And I made a decision to myself, any question or request that Matt had, I would answer it. But if I had secret information or anything, I wouldn't vouchsafe it for him. And so I mean, there's some stuff that I probably didn't tell him. But he did a wonderful job with the book. Probably the only big issue I have with it is that he says, it was dehydration when I think it evidently wasn't. But anyway.
Again, that's another one of his theories, right? There was so many theories that came out.
They haven't figured out who shot JFK.
Exactly.
And by the way, I mean, I do think that part of what has kept the Bruce Lee legacy alive is the quest for lost footage and the mystery of his untimely demise. And the fact that he died young and beautiful. And I think in the last year or so, what has really stunned me was the amount of footage that the Arrow video box set found, and those letters. And I thought, if you'd said to me a year even ago, 2 years before that, this will be discovered and this will come to light, I would have been impossible.
I know. So who knows what else we're going to be discovering?
I think there's more material and information about Bruce Lee that's out there that will be discovered, and I think I'll give you, just going back to Way of the Dragon for a minute, I have a very good authority, and I believe it to be true, that a wealthy Hong Kong individual came upon some of that footage that was kept at Golden Harvest, 20 minutes of outtakes from Way of the Dragon.
Wow.
But he was not like me with the Game of Death. He was like, by the light of the full moon, he looks at it, his hand in his castle, and goes, "It's mine, mine."
So there may be 20 minutes of footage out there that we haven't seen.
I believe there is.
Okay. I also heard that Robert Lee is sitting on some footage. I heard that he had some footage filmed of Sammo and Bruce practicing the scene from Enter the Dragon, the beginning scene, in the backyard, and I heard that he has some of that footage.
Robert, you can have him on your show and maybe ask him directly, but from my conversation with Robert, he doesn't remember filming anything as specific as that. He did say that he had footage, because he was around when they were filming Game of Death, and he had some footage that he filmed around that time. Of like the photo shoot and all that stuff. But he said he had a roll of film at his place, and I need to get over there maybe and try to help him too.
Because I heard it's getting old.
It's actually tape, I think. It's actually early video tape. Because Bruce was ahead of his time. You've seen the footage, obviously, where he's practicing with Dan.
Okay, now, 5 on together. Fast, ready, go! Camera. Too high. Go! On top.
Right. So that was that. But I never, Robert, again, firsthand, did not have any recollection of filming that. But he did say he was around and had film materials with Bruce at Bruce's behest. Hey, grab the camera, film this. And he had some film in an obscure early video format that he never transferred.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure he's sitting on.
Geez, Robert's gonna be so happy I'm telling people this because now he's
Come on, Robert, let's get you on the show.
John Little,
I heard
Dave Tadman.
I know. I heard from a friend that he's not really into the whole interviews about his brother anymore, and he's trying to take a break from that. From a friend that knows him personally, told me, because I've been trying to get him on the show.
I don't.
And I go to LA, and every time I'm out there, I'm like, "Can you get Robert to meet with me just for a half hour? I'd love to chat with him." And supposedly,
Well, I'll take you over there.
There you go.
No, and I don't know that that's well. I mean, this is something I'm loath to say, but I mean, the Bruce Lee, the diehard Bruce Lee aficionado people, I do think. I remember I talked to Ted Wong about this, and I said, "Boy, they're just so like Bruce is a part of my life and inspires other work that I do."
Yes.
I had this conversation with Alan Canvan. I said, it's great that you're kind of devoting yourself day and night to Game of Death, but don't you need to do like my focus a year or so ago was this big action film Furies, Vietnamese action film. So I said, you need to find your Furies and do something else.
Yeah.
You can't just be known for endlessly re-editing somebody else's work from years and years ago. So I think that there's a sense that I do get the mania of it.
Yeah.
But I said to Ted Wong, Bruce's student, I said, it's a shame. This is me of that time. I said, shame these people can't devote themselves to curing cancer or splitting the atom instead of just, analyzing and Bruce Lee and fighting among themselves. Yeah. And Ted said a very smart thing. He said, those kind of people, if they're not into Bruce Lee, they wouldn't be into something better. They'd be into something worse. So I think I think that there is a sense of jumping down the rabbit hole. And Robert, I think, he was just in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
About 5 months ago, and he came to the office and he really hit it off with my sons, who are both Eurasians, both musicians, and he was sitting there for like an hour talking about his life and experiences.
Wow.
And I think it's just down to the circumstance. But even with me, I mean, I'm really happy to talk to you, but I suppose if I didn't know somebody or was concerned about what angle they were taking, I might be a little bit
I can understand
circumspect. But I don't think there's any, just to be clear, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule that Robert doesn't like to talk about Bruce Lee. And I also think, and I can, other people can work with him as I have, there's no sense that I think there are other projects to be made.
Yeah.
Like we have an idea of a documentary about the whole Lee family history, which is really interesting.
That would be a really
something
great
like The Crown,
yes.
The Crown of Hong Kong, but with the Lee family, not the royals. And we have other documentaries that we would like to do.
Wow, nice. Well, I wish those come to fruition, man.
Thank you.
We can never have enough.
It won't be for wanted trying.
There we go. So we'll start winding down soon, but I have a few other questions for you. I wanted to ask you again your thoughts, just switching gears a little bit on, there's a big collecting world out there on Bruce Lee and Bruce Lee collecting, and Baker's part of it, and Tadman, and they're continually putting out memorabilia on Bruce Lee, and it's amazing how many people were inspired in so many different ways. Some chose to study martial arts, some got into fitness, some got into writing, artistry, and some just collect. And that's their connection to Bruce Lee. What is your whole thoughts on this whole collecting world and the world of collecting Bruce Lee memorabilia? Have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there's two sides to it. There's the collecting of memorabilia, and there is the sourcing of photo material that you should turn to books. I find to a great lesser degree the people concerned are a little bit strange, but that often in art, and maybe people might think that of me, but in art you have to separate the art from the artist. And I think the collections that are acquired are amazing, exercises in kind of like focused, how do I say it, like a monomania. This is what I'm going to do with my life. And it's an extraordinary achievement to put something together where you just focus on one thing and you put a collection together like Jeff Chin did. You make it, really, extraordinary. And at the same time, I look at some Steve Carriage and these books again, and coming with new material and researching or whatever. It's incredible. For me, I look at it and go, I sometimes think, if all you're about is Bruce Lee, you kind of miss the point. Because Bruce's whole thing was like to be yourself. To absorb what you could from him and then create what is your own. And that's why for me, I always felt I'm inspired by Bruce Lee, but I want to have a separate career. And I'll still write books and do documentaries about him.
That's a good point.
But I would do other things. So I look at it with a double-edged sword. I say, okay, the work they did is great. I look at it and think, boy, it's a different mindset to mine in that you're okay with just doing Bruce Lee. all day, every day. But I admire the work that they bring out.
Yeah.
I do think it's extraordinary. Yeah.
Do you have any collectibles that you have on Bruce that you really take pride in, like 1 or 2 personal items or anything that you accumulated over the years that you say, well, I really take pride in owning this, an autograph, a personal
Do you know what?
piece of Bruce?
I had everything because I actually got the whole
Golden
memorabilia.
Artist, yeah.
But there were multiple copies of stuff. And again,
and thank you for sending me some of those lobby
my
cards
pleasure.
and
Flyers. Some of it's gone now because
Yep.
I've been perhaps overly liberal because I always felt, as with the Game of Death, I was just the kind of the evangelist. I was like the kind of the curator of this material to share with people.
Yeah.
So it went out into the world, and we've been selling it and giving it away. But I've never had that kind of collector's mentality about Bruce Lee.
Okay.
But I have a big. I hope you come to Hong Kong visit.
Yeah,
I've got a big library in my martial arts school office, and I have lots of books about Bruce Lee and things that have a personal meaning for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, for example, my late father bought me my first VHS copy of Enter the Dragon.
So that
has a place in my heart. But in terms of signed Bruce Lee stuff, I don't think I got anything. No,
Okay.
I mean, I've been offered stuff, but it was always fantastically expensive, and I was like, But as I say, I look at the collections people put together, and I'm in awe of them. I mean,
some of them are just amazing, especially with the personal items now and his business cards and I have a few autographs myself.
Again, it goes back to what I was saying. There's more Bruce Lee footage and more Bruce Lee information out there. The fact that people are still coming up with signed checks and whatever, it's like
It's
amazing.
crazy. I know, it really is. So, in ending, how did this book come about now? Bruce Lee and I. When did you put that out?
This came out. You know what? It's a really good question. I can answer it by looking in here. 2018, so not that long ago.
Oh, okay.
But I worked on it for a long time.
Wow.
I almost say I worked on it for like 40 years or whatever. I had been writing for Kung Fu Monthly, I'd been working in films in Hong Kong, and I decided to do a book. I think if you write a book, you should write the book only you can write.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a through the looking glass of my own life experience relevant to Bruce Lee, and then the films of Bruce Lee. So for example, the chapter of Game of Death, we talk about Game of Death, and then we talk about me finding the Game of Death footage.
It's all in here, okay.
Way of the Dragon, we talk about the story of that film is that Bruce went to Rome and he needs to kind of rescue this this restaurant that's been threatened by a mafia boss played by John Ben. In the real world, I opened the Bruce Lee Cafe on Robinson Road with John Ben. So you get the story of that.
So you were involved with opening the cafe at the time of that.
I was one of the partners.
Oh,
that did
nice,
that.
nice.
So, and then, for example, Fist of Fury, I remember going to see at the end, Bruce fights Bob Baker, Petrov. And so, I always wondered, boy, how would that be? And then I was Petrov on the TV Fist of Fury with Donnie Yen. So I tell that. So it's kind of, I think there are other people, I mean, and they do.
So this is a very personal recollection of your life, intermixed with Bruce Lee.
It may be that people, I mean, I hope people enjoyed the book. I had some reticence, but I felt that if I just tried to do a book like Matt Polly had done, it would just be, another biography of Bruce Lee.
Yes.
And I felt like, well, let me filter it through my unique experience so that it's different and somebody else couldn't do that. But that was my aim.
And this is still available for purchase? People
it is. Very few copies are left.
On Amazon?
E-copy, yes. Amazon and through our site www.reeleast.com. That's reeleast.com, folks. A lot of other stuff as well, including genuine Bruce Lee movie memorabilia. A few copies of the hard copies of the book, and the e-book is available. And I am currently re-editing. And we'll be reissuing it because it's sold out its initial print.
Oh, nice, man. So if you guys haven't picked this up, try to find this book. It's a great book by Bey Logan, Bruce Lee and I, a biography and memoir.
Correct. It's a biography of Bruce Lee. It's a memoir of me.
There we go.
So
and thank you for my signed copy. I really appreciate that.
So if anybody in the world deserves a signed copy, it's Charles.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So in ending, I want to just kind of end with a question or two for you again.
Sure.
If you had a chance to meet Bruce Lee,
yes.
I know I always wanted to meet him.
Yeah.
Do you have a question or something you would say to the guy if you had a chance to meet him?
I'll probably ask him and say, in terms of martial arts as applied in the real world, what do you perceive to be the highest level of accomplishment of Sao Wai that an individual can aspire towards? It's like, how far do you take this? And I think that would relate to filmmaking art as well. But it was more like, I don't think it can be just about how to improve your kicking and punching.
Yes.
Because, you know, that'll be okay until you get to 50, 60, 70.
And then what do you do?
But then beyond that, how do you apply, how do you make your life truly fulfilled by this martial philosophy and way? And I would love to have had an opportunity to sit down with him, and he said, well, because you could hear the beginnings and the pre-echoes of that in the interviews he was giving.
Yes.
And I think, had he lived longer, because I think kind of built into your question is the idea that he would have lived longer, that we could have met him.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, you know, what is the highest level of accomplishment a martial person can have in the real world?
Yeah.
That lesson would have been useful because it would have been something tangible, something permanent.
That everyone could aspire to. Yeah,
totally.
That would have been
But
awesome,
that's something, with all my flaws and mistakes and things that I've made in my life, that I think about every day, whether it's with the Kung Fu school or writing books or making films. I have the same thought every day, and living my life and having a family is, how do you best realize yourself as a martial artist in the real world?
Yes.
And that's the thing.
That's it. It's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to give you a catalog that I put together a while ago.
See, now I have a favorite
there we go.
artifact.
So, as a collector for years and years, and Bruce Lee fan, I put together these catalogs because I always had collectors emailing me going, hey, I'd like to see your collection. What do you have?
Did you
have
sign
this?
it?
I'm going to sign it for you, I promise. And there's over 750 collectibles in here of my collection. I also, you'll see all the people I met, like Linda Lee, Shannon Lee, you know, Ted Wong.
Wow.
You know, Bruce's first generation.
Right.
They're all in there. You'll get a kick out of the
My book is
catalog.
actually devalued if I sign it.
It'll be nice material you could thumb through on the plane going back to Hong Kong, man.
What's it worth on eBay? I'm kidding. Actually, when you come to Hong Kong, you'll see in my study room, in my office, I actually have a wall devoted to this section's Bruce, this section's Jack.
Oh, I can't wait.
You come in.
I may want to go with Alex. He told me he's going to do another trip next year. So I may take him up on that. Yeah,
those are, I mean, bless Alex.
I know.
I wouldn't want to do them. But I mean, the organizing thereof.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's so fun.
I know.
And I've enjoyed, myself and my teacher, Mak Tigong Sifu, we've really enjoyed working with Alex and participating on those events.
Yeah.
And my son Ryan was the host last time.
Oh, that's
It was
fantastic.
a really family event. It was great.
Well, this was great, Bey. I want to thank you, man,
My
for your time
pleasure,
here
Charles.
today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming.
Everybody support Charles's site. His podcast is awesome.
Thank you, Bey.
You know, really appreciate the energy and time you put into it.
You're very welcome, guys. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you're new to the channel, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, as always, have fun collecting, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care, guys. Nice, Bey. Thank you, man.
Okay.
So yeah, Bey Logan and I are here in City Wing Chun in Sifu Alex Richter's school, also known as the Kung Fu Genius. I want to thank Alex for allowing us to film this amazing interview here at his school on 38th Street and 6th Avenue. So if you never visited the school, please look up City Wing Chun.
You should. I mean, Alex is one of my best friends in the martial world, or any world, and also somebody I greatly admire because he has like a work ethic and a focus and a warmness of heart that he applies to everything he does. And he's been like a Kung Fu instructor. People don't know this. He was like he was racing in the Cannonball Run before. He is fascinated by things like Star Wars. He has a fascinating interest in comparative religions and Chinese language. So there's so much more to him than meets the eye of just being the average Kung Fu guy. And he's heavily into Bruce Lee and all the things that, and Chinese martial arts movies, all the things that I'm into as well. But he really talks the talk, walks the walk. And I would say if you're in the New York area or you're interested in having a Wing Chun instructor work with you, you could do no better in this world than Alex Richter. And he has only paid me 9,000 to say all of the above.
There you go. Thank you again, Alex. We really appreciate
Thanks,
this.
Alex. Appreciate it, man.